Talk Live.
Welcome to the Free Talk Live podcast, which feels weird to say, and it probably feels weird to hear, given that Free Talk Live has been advertising for a very long time, that we've been advertising since podcasting began. I've heard Ian say that in that commercial.
Yeah.
Thousands of times.
Yeah, we all have.
However, what we've been doing, I feel, and like Ian and Mark, and I don't think I've asked whether or not you actually agree with this take on it. What we've been doing is not a true podcast.
Right. We've been sort of repackaging the 3-hour radio program and calling it a podcast, but we're not setting out specifically to be a podcast.
Right. And to me, that's fundamentally different. That's a fundamentally different thing. Like a podcast should be 30 to 45 minutes, I think. And that's what we're aiming for here with this. And once a week is probably a good release window, something along those lines. Not too frequent and not too infrequent that people lose interest.
Sure.
Now, the audio archive, that's what I'm calling the existing podcast in order to avoid confusion. Like, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
All of that stuff will still be there. It's still going to be on our SoundCloud. But if you want to check out the podcast and subscribe to it, freetalkcast.com will take you directly to it. But it's also going to be there on SoundCloud. So you probably downloaded this because you're already subscribed to us on SoundCloud or through our RSS feed. And this just went directly into that.
Right.
So what exactly is going to be the format of this thing? I don't really know.
Well, as anarchic types of people, we'll figure it out as we go. I know when I was doing, before I did Free Talk Live, I used to do the Kickass podcast. And what I would do is I would have some people over, over the course of, a month or something, and sort of, edit out the best of. And I would drop like 10, 15-minute episodes at once, Netflix style, right? Binge all you want, right? But they were 15-minute episodes, so if you wanted to do them slowly, you could, on your commute, on the bus or whatever. And so it took a while for me to figure out the format. I was very unformat, trying different things every week until I finally settled in on some stuff. And I think that's how most podcasts sort of become. Somebody has an idea, they start it, and then it just sort of organically finds its own groove. So
that's definitely what I would expect here. And I mean, especially as you point out, we do lean towards anarchy. Like, I had no real plan for this. I didn't even bring in show prep, right? I was just like, I'm just going to go in and wing it because that's what I do.
I just want to say to anybody who might be confused, because, Sunday was my last Free Talk Live broadcast.
Oh, that's true.
And yet here I am doing the first Free Talk podcast. So I feel a little bit like Kerry King of Slayer. Those of you who aren't familiar with Slayer, Slayer retired. Kerry King started his own band, and then as soon as that happened, there's a bunch of Slayer reunion shows announced. So this is my reunion tour, apparently. So I left on Sunday, and now it's Monday, and here I am doing my reunion tour.
It is, and I appreciate your willingness to do this. Obviously, having effectively retired from Free Talk Live after 5 years of doing the show, a lot of which was like running the show because Ian and I ended up in federal prison.
I like to say that I white knighted the show.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Because that's not really what happened, but kinda, right? It wasn't in my intent to do that, but I was in the right place at the right time, and I wasn't going to let those bastards win. By those bastards, I mean the man.
Yep. And it sucks when something that you love, something that you enjoy doing, becomes a chore, becomes an obligation, and that was the position that a lot of people found themselves in. You more than anyone in regard to Free Talk Live, and I'm sorry, it's not my fault, obviously.
No, not at all.
But I am sorry that happened.
Well, to an extent, I was like, oh no, not while I'm here, right?
Right.
And so it's sort of self-imposed as well. I'm not laying any blame or anything at anybody's feet,
except on the government, because they were the ones who did this.
Yeah, this show would have been just sailing along, doing its thing, right? When Ian was here, he had clear goals and he had the process down, and he knows way more people than I do as far as if there's ever occasionally we'd have a guest on or in the studio, that kind of thing. We didn't do any of that when I was, doing the thing. So,
well, it's a lot to do all of that. And this podcast is not new to Ian, obviously. This is something that he and I had discussed repeatedly. This is something we wanted to do.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking about it, sometime pre or post raid. I'm not really sure, but
it was probably pre-raid, because after the raid, everything just sort of went on the back burner. Like, all of these goals and projects that we had stopped being a priority because we instead had to fight this legal battle.
Right.
That only intensified as time went on. But, it was my plan today to sit down with Mark and Bonnie to do the show, because obviously you're leaving Free Talk Live to some extent. I don't know to what extent. Like, are you fully done with it, or?
So I'm sort of half in the background.
Okay.
Right. So now that you're around as wizard number 2, I can sort of remain wizard number 3. The idea is that, if you're working or, you're traveling or something and somebody needs something, with the show in the background related to, technicalities and that kind of thing, that, I told Mark I'm still around. I can still, kind of help with that kind of stuff. So I'm not leaving the state of New Hampshire, that kind of a thing. So it's not, Ian asked me to when I told him, he's like, well, is it like selling your house and, leaving New Hampshire and never to be heard from again? And I'm like, dude, I'm keeping my house, man.
Okay. Well, thank you for your service, and thank you for all of that. It was my goal to sit down with Mark and Bonnie just for the purpose of, continuation. Obviously, it would be ideal for like me, Mark, and Ian. Why are we even roping Mark into this? Is Mark even on the show anymore? Mark, I hope you're listening, because I'm not sure how connected to Free Talk Live Mark Edge really is at this point. But like sitting down with you and Ian would obviously be a terrific way to have launched this. But Ian, of course, is in federal prison. You should write him, by the way, if you haven't done that. That's 870 P.O. Box 879 in AYER, Massachusetts, 01432.
You got it memorized.
I wrote that down a lot. I mean, I was there until 3 weeks ago. And like every letter that I sent out had to have that on it. So you would address it Ian Freeman, then you would include his register number, which is...
It's on the freekeen.com website.
Yeah, excellent. Write him a letter. As someone who's been in prison, I can say for sure that coming back from my job in the kitchen around 4 o'clock in the afternoon and finding letters there on my bed, that made not just that day better, but the entire week better.
Nice. And
you do have a lot of bad days in prison, so having a letter arrive significantly helps your prison experience. On the subject of prison, though, Ross Ulbricht recently, I don't want to say celebrated, but he recently had his 10-year anniversary, I believe, in prison.
Yeah.
And he's tweeted today or yesterday. I don't actually know what today is, and it doesn't really matter. He tweeted yesterday. Now, for those who don't know, the Libertarian National Convention was this last weekend in Washington, D.C. In the belly of the beast. I don't know why anyone goes to this thing, because I've seen it streamed online here and there, and it is a clusterfuck. It's an absolute, because we can say that here.
Oh my God, can we?
Yeah, I mean, it's a
I'm
podcast.
so used to sitting in this chair not cussing the whole time.
Yes, it is a clusterfuck of just, it's exactly what you would expect. Libertarians are pedantic, argumentative type of people.
No.
They are, I know. And this is a convention full of those.
Yeah.
And the point of these conventions with Robert's Rules of Order and all of that, it's to allow these people who enjoy the pedantry and the argumentative nature of everything, the ones who will cry point of order and then bitch for 20 minutes in front of everyone, it's to give them a platform to do exactly that sort of thing.
All right. That's no wonder I don't go.
Yeah, and that's all it is for the entire weekend. They do achieve some stuff.
Yeah.
And they do nominate a presidential candidate and all of that. But I've got to give credit to the Libertarian Party. I was doubtful of this approach with PorcFest last year having Vivek. I think he spoke there. It also had RFK, who demanded a gun-free zone. I was against these things.
I still am.
I'm willing to say that I was wrong. The ground that's been covered by libertarianism as an ideology and as a force for change in the last year while I've been in prison is noticeable, right? Donald Trump, the previous president, came to the Libertarian Party National Convention and gave a speech.
And I guess since you were removed from it, it's probably more evident to you, right? And since I'm sort of, I'm not like involved in the LNC or the Libertarian Party, but like I get it on my feed. I see the headlines. I see people talking about stuff. So it's probably less evident to me because I'm exposed to it, on a daily basis. Whereas when you're in prison and then you get out, you're like, hey, this has changed.
Right.
I see a nominal increase or whatever.
Well, 2 or 3 years ago, Donald Trump, he would never have come to the Libertarian Party National Convention. It was completely meaningless to him because the party didn't have the infrastructure to make that valuable to him. And my concern with RFK speaking at PorcFest and Vivek and all of these other people possibly speaking there was that libertarians, in an effort to appeal to more mainstream politicians, would sell out and would abandon their principles. And that's obviously going to happen with some people. And like here I am, having recently said, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump.
That still doesn't sit well with me, man. I'm like,
it doesn't sit well with me either, but
did I really hear that? Like,
I
had to think about it after the show, and I'm like, oh wow,
and
that
it's
really
still
happened.
true. And like I've been, like, I'm not going to back out of that, but I've been conflicted about it until I saw this tweet from Ross Ulbricht, who again is in federal prison right now, serving out 2 life sentences for running the Silk Road website. Ross Ulbricht tweets, last night, Donald Trump pledged to commute my sentence on day 1 if reelected. Thank you, thank you, thank you. After 11 years in prison, it is hard to express how I feel at this moment. It is thanks to your undying support that I may get a second chance. And I said this, I think it was Saturday night. That
I just hope like it's not false hope and he doesn't get fucked by it.
It may be false hope.
Because that's going to be the worst thing, right? And like as a guy who's worked in tech, right, my job is to sort of predict the worst case scenario and try to avoid it, right? And so I kind of apply that to my life just sort of as a knee-jerk reaction. And my knee-jerk reaction to this is Donald Trump pandering to libertarians to try and get them to vote for him. It's obviously worked because now in my feeds, there's a ton of libertarians going, I'm voting for Trump. So same reaction you had to this information. What did bring me joy was this tweet, right, that you just read, that Ross is obviously, he's filled with hope. He's got a little glimmer that he didn't have before, right? He was probably sitting there going, guess I'm never getting out of here. Now there's a glimmer of hope for him. And like, that's important. Donald Trump does not have a good track record of keeping his campaign promises.
Well, no politician does.
I know, but specifically things like drain the swamp. How quickly everybody forgets that was his entire, he's going to drain the swamp, and he did. The swamp got bigger, right? it didn't get drained. It didn't even get reduced. It got bigger while he was in office, right? There's a bunch of other stuff that I talked about on Free Talk Live, but like he's got approximately a half and half. So out of the campaign promises he made, you could construe that about half of them he at least tried to keep or made steps towards, and the other half completely ignored and didn't do it all. This one should be easy,
though. Like, this is an easy task. This is him filling out a sheet of paper.
Executive order, sign a thing, right? Boom.
And, I was conflicted on this because I don't want to vote for Donald Trump, and I certainly don't want to advocate for people voting for Donald Trump. But here I am on, the Free Talk Live podcast saying I'm voting for Donald Trump. I'm not telling you to vote for Donald Trump. But, however, I did say a few years ago that I will vote for whichever president promises to pardon Ross Ulbricht, Julian Assange, and Edward Snowden. Yeah. And now Ian Freeman. However, these are not pardons, and he's not, to my knowledge, said anything about Julian Assange, Ian Freeman, or Edward Snowden. But Ross Ulbricht is facing the worst consequences of all of these people with his double life sentence. He doesn't have hope. And this was one of the things that I learned in prison that's really, it's really jarring, and it's not something that I ever stopped to think about previously, is that when someone has a life sentence, they have nothing left to lose, right? And like he and nothing left to hope for.
Right.
This is a glimmer of hope for him. And I said Saturday night, hope is all he has, and I'm going to hope with him. He's clearly hoping. I'm going to hope with him, and I'm going to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt, because it's not like voting matters anyway, right? My vote is not going to cause Donald Trump to win. It's not going to cause him to lose.
Right.
Is not going to have any impact whatsoever.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to feel better knowing that I did some tiny little thing to help get Ross Ulbricht released.
Or at least continue the hope.
Right.
Right, for his well-being.
One of the frustrating things that I've been seeing, I understand people not wanting to vote for libertarian or for Donald Trump because, one, he's not a libertarian, and two, he's just a piece of shit. However, the argument that, well, this doesn't do anything to help anyone else, just Ross Ulbricht, which I've had someone say to me.
That's not true.
Well, it's absolutely insane, right? If you have the option of freeing one person from prison, and yes, you have to leave the other million in prison, it's categorically evil to say, I'm not going to free this one person because all these other million people are still suffering. No, if you have the opportunity to free someone from prison and you don't do it, you're committing an act of evil. Now, I'm not saying you're committing evil by not voting for Donald Trump or anything like that.
Right.
Don't misconstrue it, listeners out there.
Would you say the same thing? So let's say Donald Trump does get reelected and he doesn't commute Ross's sentence. Is that Donald Trump being categorically evil?
Yes, 100%.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump is...
I'm looking for consistency in your philosophy. That's all.
Sure. Donald Trump is definitely categorically evil, right? He is not the most evil president we've ever had, but by being president, he is evil.
Right. Yes.
He is an evil person because it does make it sit easier for me that Donald Trump didn't start any new wars during his previous presidency. And from what we can tell, he did his best to end a few, at least the war in Iraq, which
seemingly. Yeah.
The war in Iraq, of course, it continues to go on.
Yeah.
It has not ended. There was a full withdrawal, I believe, from Afghanistan. And again, Donald Trump is at least partially.
But didn't they just move those guys from Afghanistan into Syria or something?
Yeah, probably.
They were like, oh yeah, we're going to remove the troops from it. And they moved them over one country or something.
Well, they certainly didn't bring them back home or end any other wars.
Yeah.
However, that is a step toward peace, and just not starting a new war is a good thing. Now, Joe Biden has also not started any new wars, I've noticed. The United States is not at war with Russia over this Ukraine nonsense, which I guess is still ongoing. I don't know. I stopped paying attention to news and politics in prison, and I have zero desire to pay attention to it again.
You know who Javier Milei is, though, right?
No.
Oh, my gosh. Right. It didn't occur to me that you don't know. Javier Milei ran as an anarcho-capitalist and got elected.
All right, so this guy was he ran in Argentina?
Yeah, and got elected as president. He ran as an anarcho-capitalist. That's
impressive.
His videos were him with a chainsaw, right, cutting through government, right? We're going to kill this program. We're going to kill that program. We're going to kill government spending. We're going to kill this. They're not necessary. And he would spout things that we've all spouted here on Free Talk Live and things that libertarians and ANCAPs have spouted for, I don't know, more than a decade, a couple of decades perhaps. And he got elected because he was appealing to the youth. Argentina found themselves in, I'm not sure if they had official hyperinflation, but their currency was crap and he wanted to move to the dollar. He wanted to move into cryptocurrency and that kind of stuff. And the dude got elected. It didn't occur to me that you had no idea who this guy was because you were in prison and not paying attention to world politics. But the dude gets elected. And according to what I read after Trump made his speech at the LNC, he had recently met with Javier Milei to talk about things and what his perspectives were. Now, don't get me wrong, Javier Milei is still a president of a country.
Right.
And that kind of thing. So he's not doing everything in the ANCAP way, but he certainly appears to be far better than anything Argentina has had in any recent history.
That is phenomenal news.
And so this to me is Donald Trump taking a page out of Javier Milei. Now, we've only talked so far about what Trump said about Ross Ulbricht, but let's talk for a minute, if we can, about what Trump said about crypto.
Yes, absolutely. Donald Trump's campaign takes cryptocurrency as donations. Now, do not give Donald Trump your cryptocurrency.
Don't crypto.
Do not give this asshat any money whatsoever. He doesn't need your money. He just wants it.
Yeah.
So, and all that said, don't. I'm happy he's taking cryptocurrency, but I hope those wallets remain forever empty.
Well, and he claims that he wants to sort of get rid of this persecutorial vibe that Biden is definitely giving off with regards to crypto in the United States.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
No, of course not. Not like you were directly in the crosshairs or anything.
For those who don't know, I just got out of federal prison 3 weeks ago. I was sentenced to 18 months for operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. I like to characterize it as operating an unlicensed Bitcoin exchange because effectively that's what it was. And that's clearer to people than operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. You say that and their eyes just sort of glaze over. But when you say, well, I was running an unlicensed Bitcoin exchange, they tend to understand that. It also sounds cooler, right? It makes me sound a little hardcore, I guess.
Okay, but when I tell people about like you or Ian, what happened? Oh, they're being prosecuted or persecuted for selling Bitcoin to willing customers.
Right. That's what I generally say, like on Twitter and stuff like that, because it's completely true.
Yes.
And there is a lot of prosecution from the SEC and from the FBI and Department of Justice of people who are involved in cryptocurrency. It's a witch hunt.
Yes. It totally is. The Samurai guys are one of the most recent targets of that. They're charged with money laundering, even though their platform never actually custodies the crypto.
That's insane.
So, but it's a combination of things. It's a combination of the government not understanding how cryptocurrency actually works, along with the government being completely afraid of the potential of cryptocurrency to dethrone government.
Right.
Right. And so Trump said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said that he wants to make the United States the leader in crypto.
That's fantastic. Donald Trump, you're not listening to this, but you can't make the United States the leader in crypto. What you can do is get the federal government out of the way so that the American people and so the people interested in cryptocurrency can do this themselves.
Right. Which would, I think, in the end, put the United States sort of ahead of the curve.
I absolutely agree.
Although it's getting to be time where, because Biden's administration and the FBI and the SEC and all the other alphabet agencies that are prosecuting these crypto people, they're doing it in such a way that all these businesses are leaving, all these developers are leaving, all these entrepreneurs are leaving the U.S. because
the AnyPay guys left. Yeah,
because they can't get it done here. They can't get it done without fear of going to prison for developing a platform that deals in this language of currency. It's not even it's not physical currency. So. Where are the arguments that crypto is speech? Because the Supreme Court has already decided that software is speech because it's just code. Well, so is Bitcoin. So is all cryptocurrencies are just code, right? So how is that not free speech? Why aren't lawyers arguing that? That point wasn't brought up in your trial, in Ian's trial, in any of these other trials. In I want to
discuss that a bit because I gained some pretty good insight, I think, into why this is the way it is. Now, when I first sat down with my attorney, in 2021, and we went over the strategies that we were going to invoke here, it was all about, we're going to get into these deep philosophical questions like, what is money? Is Bitcoin money? Is this money transmission? How does Bitcoin work? And he made out like we were going to get into all of these things. But as time went on, it became clearer and clearer and clearer that Ian and I were going to have to fight this, not with one hand tied behind our backs, but with both of them tied behind our backs. We weren't going to be allowed to ask a question like, can you prove that Bitcoin is money? Because in order for us to be guilty of money transmission, we had to have transmitted money. So explain to us how Bitcoin is money. We were never going to be able to make that argument. We were never going to be able to show that no money actually moves when a Bitcoin transaction occurs.
Right, yeah.
None of that stuff which should happen, right? We should have that right to defend
I expected yours and Ian's trials to both have those arguments presented and bring in, experts in crypto who can, sort of teach this, right? Who can, because the jury needed to be educated on all of this stuff before making their decision, which they weren't in either case. And it's just another example of the damning that the system forces upon people, right? You cannot get a fair trial.
No, you can't, because they did not explicitly forbid us from making these sort of defenses, but our attorneys would never have done it. And if I had known then what I know now, I would absolutely have represented myself 100%. Like my attorney, Richard Guerriero, fantastic attorney. Yeah. Absolutely wonderful guy. Amazing attorney. He did the best he could for me, but I think my best chances of getting found not guilty would have been self-representation. It would have been to get up and make these arguments that no attorney is going to risk getting disbarred or pissing off a judge in order to make. Well, I don't care. And I have the right to defend myself using whatever means I can to defend myself. But the point of the prosecution, one of the tasks they have in front of them is to limit your options of defense. until they can counter every little defense that you can make. Like, they knew that Ian was going to bring in character witnesses and all of that, but they arranged the game so that none of the character witnesses affected the actual facts of the case. And they narrowed everything down to that.
Well, they made it so that the facts wouldn't alter the opinion of the jury in Ian's case.
Yes.
Because it was a jury trial.
Right.
And, like, we all know that, like, a jury will convict a ham sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you go to the jury trial, odds are against you already, because juries are infamous for convicting people of things. And then,
dude, there were people in prison who would say that sort of, who would hold those positions, right? There was one guy named Adrian Alexander, the most entitled piece of shit I've ever met. This ultimately ultra rich Romanian gypsy dude who's just a complete asshole. Anyway, one of the conversations we had was that he had come back from Italy and he got arrested by the FBI. And he said that, well, I told them everything because I knew they wouldn't have arrested me if I hadn't done something wrong.
oh my God.
Like, dude, you're in their custody, man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, like, is that not like Munchausen syndrome? What it was, Stockholm syndrome?
Yeah.
Like, you're one of their victims and you're justifying it.
Yep.
You're saying you were guilty because, and one of the character witnesses that we had for Ian said the same thing when I stopped by and visited him like 2 or 3 years ago. He said, well, the FBI raided you guys, so you must have been guilty of something.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality that even people in prison who have been through this system still maintain. So the innocent people, or the people who have never been charged out there, they absolutely maintain that position. Oh, you're going to trial? You must be guilty. Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah, there has been surveys done, and we've cited the sources before, but of attorneys, right, both defense attorneys and prosecutors, and they all agree that there's never been a case where not talking made things worse.
Hold on, okay.
During the arrest, right? During the arrest.
So talking always makes it worse.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, not always, but like, there's never been a case where, that case could have totally gone your way if you'd have just started talking at the time of arrest to the cops or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or the FBI or whomever, right?
Well, of the Crypto 6, one person was interviewed prior to the raid, and this person told them everything, right? Because we were under the impression that we were doing nothing illegal, first of all.
Yeah.
And so we had nothing to hide. I don't think I was even in New Hampshire at the time that this interview happened, but this person was interviewed by the FBI and told them everything. And then this person was charged right alongside us 4 or 5 years later. Now, my interview with the FBI when they arrested me that day, I did say a bit more than I thought I did. I gave them my name, all of that stuff. And it was all really basic until they asked me about if I had ever sold cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Or if I don't remember exactly how they phrased the question, but I answered, well, no. What I did was more akin to a vending machine where I would sell a product and then I would resupply that product. And they asked me another question and I was like, no, I need my attorney now because we're getting way too personal.
Yep.
But in my defense, they already knew that I was selling Bitcoin, and that was something I had never denied. I even put a YouTube video out there how to do it.
This is the thing that gets me the most is that in no way, shape, or form was anybody hiding anything. Right?
No, it's totally upfront about
it. Ian was advertising on this show. Yeah, go to localbitcoins.com. I'm on there. I've got a good rating, but and you put out the videos at the Bitcoin Embassy. You invited people to come. You're like, hey, this is how I'm doing this. This is how like this was all blatantly in front of the public eye in every way, shape, or form. And no one said a damn thing. There wasn't any knock on the door. There wasn't any letter of like, hey, we think you might be doing something illegal. There wasn't, it was straight up militant action, damaging the property, et cetera, and so on. Before any there still to this day is no cryptocurrency legislation. No new laws have been introduced regarding cryptocurrency.
Right. And you bring up a really good number of points. The first one I want to talk about is that Ian did, in fact, receive a letter. The Shire Free Church received a letter, but I don't remember who it was from, advising them that they needed a money transmitter license or advising them of something legal related.
It was like an email though, right? And like sent from like potentially a junk address.
I don't recall.
Like a do
the
not
specifics.
reply kind of a thing where it like went out to like a bunch of people.
It's very likely. And I seem to recall hearing something like that, but don't quote me on any of that. But he did receive some sort of notification. But right, that's not the way these things should work, especially not via email.
Right.
And all the FBI had to do was show up with a warrant at a reasonable time and search the place and take us into custody.
Yeah, they could have knocked.
Yes, they absolutely could have. But
and somebody would have opened the door and been like, hey, what's going on? Can we talk to you?
I'm told they did knock at a few places, but based on the footage I saw here and the footage I saw at my house, they did not.
There was no knocking.
They did not knock here or at my house.
It was a classic no-knock raid.
Yeah. And, it sucked to go through that. But, that's all behind me now. Now I'm moving forward. Free Talk Live is finally able to not begin moving forward because we can't do that without Ian.
Yeah.
And that's one of the shittier things about being released. Like I've seen all the people that I want to see except one.
Yeah.
And I intend to fill out the form to go visit Ian. However, I have been banned from emailing Ian. So it seems very unlikely that I'm going to be permitted to go and visit him since I've been banned. Like we were emailing back and forth like daily.
How can they? That doesn't make any fucking sense.
No, and then suddenly I got an email from the prison saying, hey, look, we're blocking this communication for security reasons. You're not allowed to communicate with this inmate. I'm like, what? Security reasons? That's crazy. So I have to appeal that, and I'm going to appeal that. Yeah. And you only have 15 days to appeal this sort of thing anyway.
Yeah.
So I've gotten all of the paperwork in order. I think we can probably fight this and win because we have the court order allowing Ian and I to have contact.
Right.
The problem is the court order specifically is in regard to Free Talk Live.
Right.
Which, that's primarily why Ian and I want to communicate anyway, but we are also friends. However, you're not allowed to run a business from within BOP custody. And there's the court order allowing Ian and I to have contact is for the purposes of Ian and I running this business together.
Is this a business?
Legally, from their standpoint, yes.
Yeah. See, that I still don't believe that. They did not prove that it was a business. With regards to Ian and his tax evasion.
No, that's a different thing.
Okay.
That's the Shire Free Church.
I mean,
right.
we have, I use the term, we have business to take care of regarding the show, but this show is not a money-making entity.
No, but like most shows, I mean, it has been a money-making entity.
It has, yes, sure.
But most shows do have some sort of LLC or some sort of business entity that exists. Free Talk Live doesn't, but that's because we're anarchists. And there is like Mark Edge Media and I think Shire Free Church Holdings, LLC, and a few other business entities that do, in fact, exist as businesses, or at least within the confines of the legal system.
Yeah.
But whether or not any of those make Free Talk Live itself, like Free Talk Live is owned and operated and managed by the Shire Free Church.
Right.
But is Free Talk Live itself a business and subsidiary of the Shire Free Church, or is it just a hobby that is undertaken?
We can make these arguments here on this show, but as far as the government's concerned, right, they can say, well, you guys are a business, so fuck you.
Yeah. And I suspect that's probably what they're going to say, but like there's a substantial First Amendment interest here. Like Free Talk Live is the largest libertarian radio show on the planet.
Yeah.
It reaches a lot of listeners. Like it's important for the free speech rights of people who want to hear our show and the free press rights of us and the listeners to be able to produce the show. And like, I know how this equipment works to about 50% of Ian's capacity.
Well, that's probably 50% more than me.
So yeah, and like that's a lot of missing information.
Yeah.
Like I remember after the raid, what this place was like, and you and I got it back up and running. And like right now, it's in a state of where it just has to be maintained. But
yeah, we're floating.
Yeah.
Ian built this thing over the course of time. Right.
Also true.
And you don't have that benefit of knowing how and why every piece of gear was connected to other pieces of gear, why every piece of software was connected to other pieces. You don't have the benefit of why. You just have the benefit of like Ian showed you, hey, this is connected to this is connected to that. But like, so that gets, and I've had that same problem. I'm like, I don't want to touch this because I don't know what other things it's going to affect. Right. I don't know how big that spider web goes for this one thing. Right. You know, so I don't want to make this change because I don't want to break 2 or 3 other things on down the line and not be able to undo it.
I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. We're going to wrap it up here because we've just hit the 35-minute mark, and that seems about right. I intend to make this accessible to Ian through the BOP system. And what I mean by that is that I'm going to contact the people who, the music and podcasts and stuff, they're handled by a third party called ATG Music. And I had a friend contact them when I was on the outside for unrelated reasons. I am going to do my best to get the Free Talk Live audio archive and podcast put into the BOP system so Ian could just go in there and just download the episode every day.
Hell yeah.
That's one of my goals going forward within the next few months. So hopefully, Ian, you've listened to this and we miss you. Even if not, I want you to go out there and I want you to write Ian. Go to freeking.com. Just search for Ian Freeman. You can find steps on how to do that. So thanks so much for listening. Same time next Friday. Well, no, how do I end a podcast? I don't know.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah, that's it. We'll see you next time.